We are starting day three with a keynote talk. Erik Van Vulpen is the founder of the Academy to Innovative HR. He's a globally recognized HR thought leader in digital and analytical skills, as well as a regular speaker on HR learning and upskilling. Welcome, Erik.
Thank you very much, and welcome everyone. I'm very excited to talk to you today about bridging the gap between HR innovation and the future of work. And I would like to start off with a brief story. My uncle retired about half a year ago, just when COVID-19 started to rise. And when he retired, there was an article in the local newspaper about him retiring. And why was that? Well, 45 years ago, he started his job in a space where there were a lot of people like him. He was a milkman. So what he did, he brought fresh milk every day to houses all over his neighborhood. And that was back then the way to get fresh milk. Now, 45 years later, he was one of the last of his kind. And that's why when he retired, there was a newspaper article dedicated to him being the last in the region, the last milkman to finally retire. And I think when we talk about the future of work, I often have to think about my uncle and how when he started to work, being a milkman was a very normal job. It was something that was very common to see. These days, it is very different. And when he retired, he even got a newspaper article about his retirement. When we talk about the future of work, we know that the future is hard to predict, but we see some common trends. And in the next 30 or so minutes, I would like to go over these trends and give you an idea of what HR can do to stimulate innovation and to prepare the organization and the people in the organization for the future of work. My name is Erik Van Vulpen. I'm the founder of the Academy to Innovate HR, abbreviated AIHR. I have a background in psychology, business administration, and law. And as you can see on the picture, my hair back then was a lot longer. I founded the Academy to Innovate HR because I saw a big gap between the capabilities that were needed. If you open a job description about an HR business partner, you see certain skills that you didn't see 10 years ago or even 5 years ago. Skills like people analytics, digital skills, and an even higher level of business acumen. That's why I started the Academy to upskill HR professionals. And we've been doing that for a couple of years now. We are serving 325 of the Fortune 500 companies, and we have over 500,000 visitors every month coming to our platform, essentially to learn and to upskill their HR professional career or their employees' career. Now, when we talk about innovation in HR, there are two streams. HR, on the one hand, is responsible for innovation in the wider organization. And the other stream of innovation is innovative HR, which is the theme for today, innovation within HR. And in this opening keynote, I would like to spend some time on listing interventions that HR can implement to innovate the wider organization and to create more innovation within HR itself. And I would like to do so by going over 4 key areas, which are, first of all, the workplace. Second, the person in the workplace, the employee. Third, the organization where the employee interacts in. And fourth, the HR professional. Many of you are probably listening. I think most of the audience are HR professionals. What are the things that we as HR professionals can do in order to be better prepared for the future? I would say, let's get started. So when it comes to the workplace, quite a few things have changed, especially in the past year. Something new has been going around. You may have heard of it. It's called COVID-19. And it's everywhere. And many of us were forced to work from home temporarily or are still working from home. And what we've learned is that this working from home is not always a good thing. Working from home removes the separation between, on the one hand, work life and private life. You're not in a situation anymore where you can work at work and then close your laptop and then go home and then have your normal life, your living life. No, those two are often blended together. And that puts strain on employees and on their mental health. Now, there's something to say if you say, hey, the pandemic is something temporarily, but I don't think that's the case. Many organizations like Twitter and like Square are saying that they'll move to a permanent remote working arrangement even after the pandemic. And organizations like Microsoft are now introducing the hybrid workplace where an employee can work from home if they want to work from home, or they can go to the office when they want to come to the office. And these kinds of more flexible arrangements will keep persisting after the pandemic, post-pandemic. And as HR, we need to come up with ways to remove the drawbacks that working from home has when it comes to innovation, to learning, and to connectivity with employees, and also when it comes to employee well-being. Now, one of the things that you see happen when work is happening over Zoom instead of in person is that you lose these water cooler conversations. The conversation when you go to the coffee machine and you interact with people that you might not directly work with, but that work in different departments, have different interests, different skills, different personalities. And when these people come together, people that don't know each other yet, that's where innovation happens, shows the research. And I think there's a vital role for HR, especially now when we're working from home, and in the future when working from home will become more common, to make sure that these kinds of connections of people who didn't know each other but who can learn from each other, that those connections will keep happening. Connecting to those people will create creativity. It will boost learning because you interact with people that you don't usually interact with in your normal Zoom calls and your normal work, and that will spark innovation. Another intervention is that during the pandemic we've learned something, and we have learned that it's not necessarily the external environment that influences employees' engagement. It is much more how the organization reacts to the things happening around us. COVID didn't really impact employee engagement on a global level. It was much more the organizational response that impacted engagement in that organization. And I think employee engagement has always been important for HR professionals, of course, but I think especially, in this time where a lot of people are still working from home, in this time where towards the future, people will work from home a lot more permanently. To build mental health, we need to engage people because resilience is a key outcome of employee engagement. At the same time, innovative behavior is also a key outcome of engagement. So there has never been a more important time to make sure that the workforce is engaged, the ones who are physically in the office, but maybe especially the ones who are physically not in the office. Coming up with strategies to keep these people engaged will help to boost their productivity, but also their resilience in times like these, and their innovative capability. And when we talk about innovative HR, innovation in the wider organization, that is another key way to boost it. Now, let's take a look at the individual, the employee. Now, in the past 5 to 10 years, there's been a lot of talk about baby boomers, Generation X, millennials. I think I'm a millennial myself. Gen Z and Generation Y, I think, is being born today. Or Generation Z, I think they're called. It's confusing, as you can see. Now, last year, a topic was introduced. It was called the perennial. And the perennial is the ageless generation. It's described as a generation. It's not really a generation. It's a group of people of all different generations looking to learn and to develop themselves. And this is a trend that I'm very much in favor of, because if we look at science, the scientific backing between generational differences is very flimsy. There's hardly any evidence, there's a little evidence, but hardly any substantive evidence about big generational differences. What we see is that over time people change. The zeitgeist changes, now compared to 20 years ago. But over the generations, if you do a cross-sectional study, the evidence of generational differences is very, very small. And I like that. I think we need to move towards a situation where we see the employee as an individual and not necessarily as a member of a group called the millennial or Generation Z or X. What we see in this age generation, the people who are starting today, they will change their career 5 to 7 times during their working life. And some of these changes will be minor changes, and some of these will be fundamental shifts where they go to a different area of expertise, a totally different discipline. And this creates pressure on us as an organization, and especially as HR professionals, because not only should we as HR professionals keep learning, but when we have employees in the organization who are around, say 50, and they say, I don't really feel like going on a training because I have a lot of experience already, it's not something I want to invest in. These are people that may still have to switch careers 2 or 3 times before they retire. So getting these people to learn and to absorb more knowledge is key in building a successful workforce, a non-stagnant workforce. And that's, of course, what an organization should look out for. So learning in the organization needs to become second nature. In addition, if we look at what should we specifically focus on, if there's one skill we should learn, recent research from a few months ago, it was published, shows that technology adoption is the biggest challenge for senior leaders, for executives in 2020. And technology adoption is about how do we implement new technology and make sure that everyone keeps using this technology. And the interesting thing is, in this same research, they asked for 2020 what people saw as the biggest challenge, but they also asked for 2025 what people asked as or saw as the biggest challenge. And again, technology adoption was number one, even in 2025. So if you don't have a learning and development strategy focused on how do we make sure that the people in our organization build their digital capabilities and learn to adopt technology in a better way, if you don't have that strategy, you need to have it today. Because if you don't have it today, you will still need it in 5 years. So it's a problem you can best tackle today because it will create value for the organization and for the individual employee for the next 5, 10, and maybe even more years, because technology will only advance faster and faster. And then third, of course, we go from the employee to the organization. And when we talk about innovation in the broader context of the organization, there's this concept called the learning organization. And an organization can become, well, let me first say, what is a learning organization? A learning organization is literally an organization focused on maximizing learning. And that is learning for the individual in the organization, and then as a result, also learning as an organization. And a learning organization is much more innovative, will remain relevant longer, and will be able to launch new products that are profitable. It is a more viable organization. Viability in the sense of continuous, they're able to survive and to thrive towards the future. Now, there are 4 key interventions that can make an organization be more of a learning organization. And the first one is putting autonomy lower in the organizational hierarchy. And this is something that has 2 separate effects. First of all, when you put autonomy lower in the organizational hierarchy, and you give people lower in the organizational hierarchy more decision-making power, these people will get a better training from the organization. The organization will be more selective in who they hire for those positions, and they will make sure that the education for these people, the onboarding, the training is on point. Because if people have decision-making power, you want them to use that power to a good and effective end that will benefit the organization. So placing autonomy over time lower and lower in the organizational hierarchy will create more opportunities for these employees because they receive more formal training and as a result learn more. And because they have more responsibility, they also feel more responsible for their own success and the success of the role that they're in. So they're more inclined to learn and develop themselves. The second intervention is about creating a more organic structure. And creating a different organic structure is not something you can just do. That is a long change process that is needed. But a small and simpler intervention that many of you might be familiar with in HR is job crafting. Job crafting is the ability to change the scope of your job and add different responsibilities that make a job fit your interests better and also your skills better. So if you want to develop yourself into a skill XYZ, you expand your job to start working on those specific skills. So it's an organic way of reshaping, recreating your job over time. What we see is that if you allow people to job craft, to change your job over time slowly, the organization will become slowly but steadily more organic. And a more organic organizational structure has a few key benefits. Again, there's two key benefits. First of all, information sharing does not go through the traditional hierarchy. So where traditionally you see an employee talks to their manager talks to another manager, and they talk to the employee in sales, and that's how, for example, marketing and sales are now communicating through their managers. In a more organic structure, you see that many of these vertical layers are removed and that people have more horizontally oriented roles. So on the one hand, the one effect is they experience more responsibility because they fit better in their role. Again, more responsibility leads to learning. And second, because they have a more organically formed role, there's not the communication with other departments through the hierarchy. There's more indirect or more direct, horizontal, lateral conversations. So in these organizations, you see either planned or unplanned, more liaison roles, more lateral communication roles emerging, where you talk to specialists directly of another department and where you can directly learn from them, creating a significant learning effect. Now, a third way of creating more learning in the organization is creating more complexity in your organization. It's not always, the common myth is that smaller organizations have the leg up when it comes to innovation compared to larger organizations. And this is not true, because larger organizations have a number of skill benefits that will help them learn. The first one is that larger organizations provide more specialist roles. So if you're a larger organization, you have more specialists, and these specialists are better developed in their own skills and get more opportunity to develop those skills and to become true specialists, vertically integrated professionals. These specialists work together with other specialists, so they can learn in their job and they can also learn from each other, creating more of a learning environment. But there are two more reasons why complexity adds more learning opportunities. And that's because more complex organizations and have many more of the mundaner processes automated or digitized, which means that in general, there's more time to invest on other activities, including learning. And the other reason is that more complex organizations can also offer their employees more complex organizational challenges. These organizations try to solve a wide variety of problems, and the larger the organization, the larger these problems and these challenges are. And when employees from different backgrounds with different interests are involved to solve common organizational issues, there is more learning in the organization, and these people working together creates also more innovative solutions. Now, the last element of creating an organization that is more oriented towards learning is having a clear purpose. Because as an organization, having a clear purpose will structure the learning. It will prevent you from employees spending time on pottery courses, so to say. Instead, employees will focus on skills that will help the organization's mission advance. So if you have a clear purpose in your organization, innovation in the organization will be more goal-oriented, and it will help the organization be more successful in the longer run. Now, this brings us from the organization to the HR professional. The HR professional has, I would say it's safe to say that the profession has changed. As I said in the introduction, If you look at the description or the job description of the general of an HR business partner, you see that there's a big gap between skills required now and skills required 10 years ago. And I think the three biggest key competencies required for HR professionals are business acumen, and we already saw it. If as an employee, as an HR professional, you understand that you can drive business success through creating more of a learning organization, you can start to implement small interventions that will in the end boost learning and thus increase organizational effectiveness over the long run. So understanding the business will lead to business success. And the other two skills are being more data-driven and being digitally savvy, understanding the technological landscape. And what I would like to do is I would like to go over each of these three in order and elaborate a little bit on why these three skills are so important for the modern day HR professional who wants to be ready for the future. And let's start with business acumen. Of course, when the HR business partner role was introduced about 25 years ago, business acumen was one of the key competencies. In order to be a partner of the business, you need to deeply understand the business. You need to understand the business context. And the way I like to formulate it is that as a professional, you need to position HR policies and activities in a way that will serve the organization and deliver sources of competitive advantage. And you can do that through a number of ways. But I think the most important is interpreting the context of work. And that's not just about knowing the internal organization, knowing what your organization is struggling with, being able to identify the sources of competitive advantage for your organization, knowing what set your organization apart from the competition, but also knowing basic financial numbers, knowing what your market capitalization is and how you compare to your closest competitors and your biggest competitor in the market. So having this basic financial insight, having this business acumen will help you do your job better. It's also about understanding customer expectations, not just internal customers, something that we've been focusing on in HR for a long time, but also external customers. If you understand the end customer that your organization is serving, it will help you make better decisions in the organization. So for example, when you're an e-learning company, you want your employee onboarding course to not be an offline training, but also to be e-learning. So your new employees can get familiar with your platform, with the way you deliver content, and you can show them that e-learning is a very effective way of communicating information, and you can showcase all the different techniques that you've worked on to do this. Just one simple example. If you understand, the places that your customers go, the personalities of your customer, those are also will likely be reflected in your employee pool. So being able to put in policies that will reflect end customer expectations will make HR a much more effective discipline, more effective than it already is. And in the end, business acumen is about co-creating business strategy and co-creating HR strategy. If you understand the business, then just as I said before, what you need to do in HR to be truly effective. Now, the second key competency that I would say needed in HR today and in the future is being data-driven. As an HR professional, you need to be able to read, understand, create, and communicate data as information. So you need to be able to dive into a dashboard and turn this data, this static data, into concrete information, actionable information that people can act on. That has to do with being able to interpret metrics and KPIs, scorecards, and dashboards. So what we want to move away from is an HR business partner going to a manager with an empty block note and saying, what can I help you with today? Ideally, you want the HR business partner to first dive into the data and look, what are the absenteeism numbers for this person's department? What is turnover like? How engaged are people? What are all the challenges that we see in this manager's department? And then with a full block note, go to the manager and say, I have this long block note. I have 5 problems that I solve. how are we going to tackle these problems, and how can we leverage data and KPIs to continuously track your effectiveness as a manager on these specific people risks that I'm seeing in the data. That is the kind of business partner that we want to move towards. That's a business partner who understands people analytics, and who will be able to interpret data and give it back to managers and make it actionable. So it's about speaking the language of the business. It's about knowing how to talk in terms of goal attainment, leveraging metrics and data to track progress, and to also evaluate HR's own performance. HR should have their own internal KPIs that they focus on, and those KPIs should be connected with the business through, of course, business acumen.
Erik, sorry for interrupting you. Our time is up.
Should I wrap it up in 2 minutes?
Yeah, go on.
Fantastic. I'll skip this slide then and very quickly take you through digital savviness. Digital savviness is about understanding technology in your organization and outside of your organization. And that brings us to 9 concrete actions for innovative HR. And I'll take you through this. It will only take about 30 seconds. First of all, creating connections in your organization with people that don't know each other, because that will lead to innovation. It's about boosting engagement, because that will create resilience and that will create more innovation. It's about offering learning opportunities. When people learn, they will develop themselves in their career. That's much longer, and it will have much more changes than ever before. And it's about learning specific skills, which are digital skills. It's about putting autonomy lower in the organization, because that will make people responsible and it will trigger them to learn more. And it's about job crafting, being able to craft your own job, your own role, and create a slightly more organic structure in which you will learn from your peers. It's about challenging employees through challenging assignments that they can work on, that they can learn from, and that they can improve the organization with. And it's about having a clear purpose in the organization that you can work towards. And then last, but the big enabler for all of these are upskilling HR, because HR should, when it comes to digital skills, but also to data-driven and other skills, HR should be the example for the business. That's it from my side, and I would just like to end with one simple message: to never stop learning in the organization, but especially in HR. Thank you very much.